The Galactic High Council chamber had a reputation for grandeur, but on the day Ambassador Samuel Drake walked through its towering doors, the place felt less like a political arena and more like an amphitheater built specifically to shame newcomers. Dozens of banners draped along the walls, each representing a species that prided itself on mastering diplomacy, fluttered in an artificial airflow. The scent inside was strangely sharp, a mix of cold stone, overconfidence, and something like fear pretending it wasn't there. Pulsing lights dimmed in steady intervals, mimicking a heartbeat, though whose heartbeat the designers intended to imitate remained an eternal debate. Samuel strolled forward with the calm of someone picking up groceries on a quiet morning. His sleeves were neatly rolled, his tie perfectly aligned, and the soft warmth on his face unsettled nearly everyone present. Human politeness had only recently entered the galactic lexicon, and several species still classified it as a psychological weapon. 12 alien representatives watched from raised seats, perched like predatory birds waiting for something to go wrong. Among them, towering above the rest, sat King Zareth of the Vorkal Empire, a mountain of plated armor, ancestry, and ego. His crown looked as though it had been carved from meteor shards, and his glare could bring traffic to a halt on any civilized world. Samuel placed one hand casually on the marble table before him and offered a polite nod. "Thank you for welcoming Earth to this energetic gathering," he said, voice smooth enough to ripple the translation screens. Half the council flinched, uncertain whether energetic was a diplomatic compliment or a veiled insult. Hive mind species traded pulses of confusion. Amphibian delegates blinked twice, a gesture humans might interpret as sympathy, but which, for them, was reserved for mourning ceremonies. Zareth rose, his growl shaking dust from the carved pillars. "Humanity has been summoned," he boomed, "to accept its defeat, or entertain us with war." Samuel tilted his head, unconcerned. "That's quite the introduction," he replied. "Most meetings begin with a greeting or a polite remark about architectural choices, but efficiency has its charm." The chamber rippled with unease. Several reptilian strategists hissed, trying to decode whether efficiency was a provocation. The hive minds whispered, "This human is either foolish or extraordinarily dangerous." Samuel raised a hand slightly. "Before we proceed, I'd appreciate a few clarifications. Humans are notorious for misunderstanding things. We're like cats around laser pointers, easily distracted, sometimes unpredictably so." A few aliens jotted down notes, trying to determine whether cats were a weapon, a metaphor, or an unfamiliar class of human combat animal. Zareth slammed his fist on the armrest. "There will be no clarifications. Earth spreads beyond its borders. Earth ignores our summons. Earth smiles during confrontation." He leaned forward, nostrils flaring. "Why do you smile, human?" Samuel's smile softened. "Because yelling rarely helps anyone, Your Majesty, and my job is solving problems, preferably without shouting." A murmur flowed through the chamber like a cold draft. Among older civilizations, a human speaking softly usually signaled one of two things: something had already gone terribly wrong, or was about to. Samuel lowered his voice. "Earth prefers peace, truly, but humanity takes survival very seriously, extremely seriously." Zareth's claws scraped the table. "Speak plainly." "Gladly," Samuel answered. "If you choose war, we'll try not to embarrass you." The chamber erupted. Howls, screeches, psychic whines. 3 species fainted. One recently literate species stared in horrified awe, unsure if history was unfolding or collapsing. Zareth struck the table so hard cracks formed like a web of black lightning. "You dare threaten the Vorkal Empire?" "I threaten no one," Samuel replied calmly. "I'm simply explaining cause and effect. Humans dislike ultimatums and shouting before breakfast." "Breakfast?" Several delegates echoed in alarm. "It's food," Samuel clarified. "Eggs, toast, coffee. Humans function better after it." 12 species panicked simultaneously. The wise Cytherans glowed with dread. "Withdraw your jest, human. War with Earth would scorch the stars." But Zareth roared over them. "Earth hides behind charm and smiles. You are weak. We demand war." Samuel inhaled gently. "All right," he said. "I'll notify my team." The chamber froze, and the war they demanded began with a whisper. King Zareth's demand still lingered in the air like a heavy echo when the chamber doors parted with a soft hiss. Samuel Drake didn't turn immediately. He simply tilted his head as 5 humans entered the room, casually, almost cheerfully, as if they had wandered into the wrong meeting after grabbing morning drinks. They wore the sleek uniforms of diplomatic security, clean lines, polished boots, matte jackets. But their relaxed expressions shattered any illusion of tension. One officer even carried a steaming thermos, the scent drifting through the chamber in bold, caffeinated defiance. The amphibian delegate croaked in alarm. "Why are your soldiers so calm?" "They're not soldiers," Samuel corrected gently, finally turning toward them. "They're colleagues." One officer offered a small wave. "Morning, everyone." The council stiffened. It was not morning anywhere on the station, and every alien in the chamber was painfully aware of it. The hive minds buzzed across their network. The humans are signaling something. But what? King Zareth rose sharply. "Human, why bring these creatures into my council?" "Moral support," Samuel replied with a polite shrug, "and someone needed to hold my coffee." The officer with the thermos took a casual sip. The move sent a ripple of unease through half the delegations. The Cytherans, glowing faintly, murmured with dread, "This reeks of preparation, human." Samuel smiled with the patience of a schoolteacher. "Nothing out of the ordinary, I assure you," which for humans was perhaps the most frightening statement imaginable. The reptilian tacticians examined the newcomers. No armor, no visible weapons, no defensive shields. Yet their posture was worse, far worse. They stood as if surrounded by nothing remotely threatening, as if this entire interstellar council posed no more danger than a flock of mildly irritated pigeons. Samuel clasped his hands. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. Before we leap into conflict, I'd like to provide clarity." "We require none," Zareth thundered. "Humanity has accepted war." "Not chosen," Samuel corrected softly. "Accepted. There's a difference." He nodded to one of his officers. In an instant, the enormous projector dome above them flickered to life, bathing the chamber in a web of shifting light. A holographic star map expanded across the ceiling, galaxies unfurling like glowing petals. The council leaned forward, almost despite themselves. Then the projection shifted. Vorkal fleets blinked into view. Great armadas represented by luminous icons. One by one, the icons dimmed, then darkened completely. The amphibian diplomat gasped. "What does this signify?" Samuel's tone remained gentle, almost apologetically so. "It means your warship stopped receiving navigation signals approximately 2 minutes before this meeting began." Silence. Then chaos. The hive minds pulsed in frantic alarm. The reptilians barked urgent orders to nowhere. The Cytherans trembled so violently their glow fractured like broken light. Only the humans remained perfectly still. Zareth's roar rattled the banners overhead. "Sorcery!" "Technology," Samuel corrected again, still maddeningly calm. "Your communication patterns have been, let's say, highly educational for us. We've been studying them since your first threat broadcast." One officer tapped his own wrist pad. "Honestly, the encryption was adorable." The word hit the delegation like an insult wrapped in candy and detonated in their faces. Samuel continued, "We don't want war, truly, but preparing for the worst is only prudent." "You mock us," Zareth snarled. "Mocking isn't my intention," Samuel said, sounding genuinely puzzled. "Humans use humor to ease tension, but I assure you my anxiety levels are quite comfortable." A subtle tremor passed through the chamber. The Cytherans spoke again, their glow dim. "Human, this is not defense. This is domination." "No," Samuel replied, "this is courtesy. We simply didn't want you sprinting into a war you can't win." The officer with the thermos murmured, raising the cup slightly, "To not sprinting." The council recoiled as if witnessing an omen. The hive minds whispered into the collective consciousness. They prepared for this long before arriving. Their confidence is not bravado. It is certainty. Zareth jabbed a claw towards Samuel, trembling with fury. This insult will echo through 1,000 cycles. Samuel tilted his head. Which part? The fleet shutdown? Or the misunderstanding about coffee? All of it, hissed the reptilian commander. Well, Samuel said kindly, we'll work on our delivery. The humans exchanged the faintest of knowing nods. Their weapon was not strength. It was unpredictability wrapped in politeness. And the galaxy had never been more afraid. The chamber's atmosphere felt as if it was shrinking, compressing under the weight of revelations the aliens were only beginning to grasp. Samuel Drake stood at the center of it all, quiet as a still lake, while chaos simmered just beneath the surface of every alien delegation. Human, the Scytherans whispered, their glow dimming into trembling blue waves. Your calm terrifies us. Samuel offered them a gentle nod. That's not the intention, but I understand. He turned toward the grand doors. Now, I think a brief tour might help clear the air. Zareth's jaw dropped open, every tooth reflecting the crimson lights. A tour? He thundered. You dare trivialize this crisis? Samuel smiled sympathetically. I never trivialize crises. I clarify them. And right now, clarity is in short supply. The council hesitated, the hive minds vibrating with anxious pulses. The amphibian diplomat, trembling visibly, hopped forward first as if compelled by some instinct for survival. One by one the others followed. Zareth remained planted, fury radiating from him like heat off a furnace. Come along if you wish, Samuel said gently. The truth doesn't wait. The corridor beyond stretched like a polished, obsidian spine, dark and reflective. Their distorted silhouettes stretched across the walls as they walked. Every step echoed like soft metal tapping, rhythmic, foreboding, and impossibly small in such a massive structure. This station, Samuel began calmly, was built on the belief that predictable behavior defines power. Whoever acts within expected patterns wins. Whoever breaks those patterns is labeled unstable. The reptilian strategist hissed softly. In humans, what label do you claim? Samuel paused mid-step. Adaptable, he answered, annoyingly stubborn, and too creative for anyone's comfort. They arrived at a wide observation deck shielded by a panoramic holographic display. Stars shimmered like scattered embers floating in black water. Samuel activated a panel, and the cluster of stars rearranged into a new projection, a detailed map of Orcal armadas, each rendered as a shining orb. One by one, those orbs faded to inactive gray. These were your primary fleets, Samuel said, tone neutral. They're now in enforced drift. A chorus of alarmed chirps, growls, and telepathic shrieks filled the deck. You sabotaged us, Zareth roared from behind them, finally storming into the room. Samuel shook his head. We secured our safety. There's a difference. He tapped the display again. A new layer appeared. Dozens, no, hundreds, of red dots pulsed across 3 different sectors, like the heartbeat of a giant mechanical creature. What are these? The amphibian diplomat whispered. Samuel clasped his hands calmly behind his back. Quantum proximity mines, deployed gradually over 18 months. 18, Zareth sputtered. 18 months? One must prepare for tradition, Samuel replied, and your empire has made threatening Earth a yearly holiday. One of Samuel's officers muttered under his breath, like a very aggressive space calendar. Why reveal this? Asked the Scytherans, glowing weakly. Why show us everything? Because, Samuel said, turning to face them fully, you demanded war. And informed decisions require knowing what you're walking into. A ripple of cold realization passed through the council. The hive minds vibrated in synchronized dread. The humans mapped us. They planned long before our summons. Their certainty is absolute. Samuel continued walking, leading them to another chamber. This one hummed with invisible fields, the air thick with a faint metallic tingle. A crystalline sphere hovered at the center, wrapped in threads of blue light. The hive minds recoiled instantly. That field disrupts neural networks. Only those attempting psychic aggression, Samuel corrected. Again, precaution, not aggression. They moved again, arriving at the final observation alcove. The hyperlane grid glittered before them, tunnels of light marking every known route through nearby sectors. Each path pulsed with small human-coded markers. Zareth stared in disbelief. You charted our invasion routes before we declared war. Samuel gave him a soft, almost pitying smile. Your empire threatened Earth 17 times in the last decade. Humans pay attention to patterns. Threats are ritual, Zareth snapped. Humans, Samuel answered gently, treat threats as promises. Finally, one last hologram flickered on. A colossal dormant structure hidden in a nebula, a metallic skeleton encircling a glowing core. What is that? The amphibian diplomat whispered, voice trembling. Horizon array, Samuel said. A final defense, a last resort. Zareth snarled. You would unleash such a thing on us? Not on your people, Samuel replied quietly. Only on the destruction you insist on bringing. The chamber fell into suffocating silence. You asked for war, Samuel whispered. Now you understand what you were asking for. The council members had barely begun to absorb the weight of Samuel's revelations when the station's alarms erupted. Deep, resonant tones that vibrated through the metal like a pulse of dread. The lighting shifted from cool neutrality to an ominous, blood-red glow that washed across every surface. The aliens stiffened instantly. Even species without traditional nervous systems reacted as though the light struck some primal instinct. But the humans, Samuel and his officers, didn't move. Not a flinch, not a whisper. Samuel took a long, slow breath, as if someone had just reminded him of an overdue appointment. We should return, he said softly. The council will require context. The way he said context made several delegates recoil. Yet they followed, driven by the kind of fear that comes from realizing you may have triggered something irreversible. When they re-entered the grand chamber, the space felt different, tight, suffocating, almost claustrophobic, as if the architecture itself wished it could retreat. King Zareth now stood in the center of the room, far from his towering throne. His claws were extended, muscles coiled, eyes blazing like shards of molten metal. The red light painted him in violent hues. You dare parade your insolence before me? Zareth roared, voice thundering through the chamber. You neutralize my fleets, you expose my vulnerabilities, and now you walk my halls as if you rule them. Samuel stepped forward, calm as dawn. Your Majesty, he said gently, none of this changes the truth. A war with humanity will not unfold the way you imagine. The hive minds trembled as one collective ripple. The Cytherans dimmed to a color almost identical to morning. The amphibian diplomat seemed moments away from collapsing completely. But Zareth was past the point of hearing reason. With a roar that rippled through the very air, he lunged. His movement was a blur, a wall of plated muscle and serrated claws, diving towards Samuel with the force of a meteor. Several delegates screamed, others ducked, and some froze with the helpless rigidity of prey. Samuel moved like someone who had already rehearsed the encounter. A quiet pivot, a single step to the side, a subtle shift in momentum. He caught Zareth's wrist, not with brute strength, but with precision. His other hand slid to the ceremonial blade at Zareth's belt, pulling it free with fluid ease. In one smooth motion, almost gentle in execution, Samuel drove the blade upward beneath the king's jaw, angled for instant termination. A chilling silence fell. Zareth's massive body stilled mid-strike, a look of shock etched across his reptilian features. His claws hovered inches from Samuel's chest, frozen in a moment that should have been victory, but had become something far more devastating. The enormous king faltered. One trembling hand gripped Samuel's shoulder for balance before the strength left him completely. Samuel eased him downward with careful, almost respectful motions, lowering the body to the polished floor as if honoring a fallen comrade rather than an attacker. Zareth's chest rose once, then stopped. A psychic wail tore through the chamber, an instinctive, uncontrollable release from the hive-minded species that rattled the walls. The reptilian strategist stumbled backward in horror. The amphibian diplomat collapsed in shock. The Scytheran's glow flickered violently, like a star about to implode. Samuel straightened, breathing steady. He drew a white handkerchief from his coat pocket and carefully wiped the blade clean. He chose war, he said, voice low and sorrowfully calm. And he attacked a diplomat. Under council law, his death is a consequence of his own decision. There was no triumph in his tone, only inevitability. One of the human officers stepped forward quietly. Status? Samuel didn't look away from the fallen king. Stable. For now. The chamber dissolved into chaotic shock, not the explosive, furious chaos of battle, but the suffocating realization of a galaxy that had misunderstood humanity entirely. The amphibian delegate croaked through tremors. Humans, kill royalty without hesitation. Samuel corrected him gently. Humans defend themselves when forced. And we warned you many times that we do not respond kindly to coercion. The Scytherans approached, their luminous bodies dim but reverent. Your restraint until this moment, they whispered, was mercy. Samuel nodded once. Mercy is often mistaken for weakness. All around the chamber, holographic projections flickered to life, fleet charts, command overrides, shifting star maps. Confusion grew with every second. Our networks, hissed the hive minds. Someone is infiltrating them. Samuel raised his hand, not to deny but to confirm. Earth intelligence. They're stabilizing your systems, preventing wide-scale panic. Gasps cascaded across the room. You seek to control us? The reptilian commander demanded. If that were our goal, Samuel said, turning his gaze toward them, none of you would be standing. Silence. Cold. Heavy. Absolute. He activated the final hologram, Horizon Array, its great metallic arches glowing like the ribcage of some sleeping god. This is not a weapon, Samuel murmured. It is a boundary, a line we hope never to cross. And if we cross it, the Scytherans asked. Samuel looked at them with an ancient sadness. You witnessed what a single human can do to a king. Now imagine what our entire species will do if survival is threatened. An awful truth settled over the room like dust. At last, the council bowed, each species acknowledging defeat, fear, and a new balance of power they could not ignore. But Samuel wasn't finished. As the last signature of surrender touched the holographic tablet, he turned toward the sealed doors. You should know, he said softly, that alarm earlier. It wasn't a threat. The doors slid open with a slow metallic sigh. It was a notification. And something enormous stepped through. The chamber doors parted with a grinding metallic strain, the red emergency lights glinting off the edges as something massive stepped into the room. Its silhouette blotted out the corridor behind it. Broad, towering, unmistakably human, yet augmented in a way none of the council had ever seen. A shockwave of silent terror rippled through the delegations. The creature, no, the soldier, ducked its head slightly to clear the archway. A plated exosuit hugged its frame, lights pulsing faintly across reinforced armor, not with aggression, but with the quiet, steady rhythm of controlled power. The suit was matte gray, unadorned, and built with frightening practicality. No intimidation colors, no ceremonial flares. This was technology created by a species that didn't need to posture. The hive minds recoiled first, their psychic threads quivering in alarm. Human, what have you brought? Samuel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the armored figure with the casual familiarity of someone greeting an old friend. Perfect timing, he said, voice warm. The exosuited soldier straightened, standing so tall the Vorkal throne looked small in comparison. The entire chamber seemed to shrink around him. Ambassador, the soldier replied with a deep, resonant tone that vibrated through the hall. Perimeter secured, external interference neutralized. Protocol Horizon 3 is active. The council members reacted instantly. Horizon 3? Hissed the reptilian strategist. You said Horizon Array was only a last resort, croaked the amphibian diplomat. Human, you swore it would not be deployed, trembled the Scytherans. Samuel raised both hands calmly, as if soothing anxious children. And it hasn't been deployed, he reassured. This is merely the protocol that prevents deployment, a safety measure. The council blinked in collective confusion. Humans had created a protocol to prevent their own superweapon from firing. The hive minds pulsed rapidly. They built a restraint system for themselves. The human officer with the thermos stepped forward. Yeah, you don't want a defense array firing because someone sneezed too hard. Happens. Samuel gave the officer a mildly disapproving glance. Not helpful. The aliens, however, interpreted the comment literally and panicked further. The armored soldier scanned the room, its visor shifting from opaque to transparent. Inside, the face was unmistakably human, a woman with sharp, focused eyes and a demeanor carved from discipline. This station registered multiple unauthorized power spikes, she reported. I locked down all outer lanes. No one is entering or leaving. The council erupted. You imprison us? The reptilian commander howled. No, Samuel corrected gently. We're containing chaos, not you. He stepped forward, placing himself between the panicked leaders and the towering soldier. Let me be perfectly clear, Samuel said, voice dropping into that controlled, devastatingly calm tone that terrified the elder races. Earth is not here to conquer. We're here because you forced our hand. His gaze swept across the room. You demanded war. You ignored warnings. You dismissed diplomacy. And when offered peace, you responded with threats. He gestured to the fallen King Zareth. And then you attacked a diplomat. The amphibian diplomat croaked weakly. So, what now? Samuel exhaled slowly. What happens now, he said, is stabilization. He tapped a command into the panel beside him. A hologram shimmered to life, this one not of war fleets or doomsday arrays, but of neutral zones, trade routes, and redesigned council protocols. Earth, Samuel continued, will take temporary stewardship of regional security. Your fleets will be restored once we're certain they won't be used impulsively. Communication lines will be rerouted to prevent misuse, and a new set of accords will be drafted, ones that keep every species alive. Under human authority? One delegate whispered, horrified. Under collective authority, Samuel corrected, but with Earth as the stabilizing element. Because you all just proved what happens when no one takes responsibility. The Satharans slowly brightened, faint hope flickering through their glow. You do not seek domination, they whispered. You seek order. Samuel nodded. Order prevents extinction. And humans, he said, a small smile touching his lips, are exceptionally motivated to avoid extinction. The exosuited soldier stepped forward. Ambassador, external fleets request instructions. Samuel's expression softened, not with kindness, but with practiced resolve. Tell them to hold formation, and he said, we're concluding negotiations. He turned back to the council. Sign the accords, Samuel said quietly, and we all walk away from this with our worlds intact. The room was silent, then one by one, hesitant at first, trembling later, finally accepting, the alien delegations approached the holographic dais and pressed their seals to the new agreement. Every signature echoed like a surrender and a lifeline. When the last mark flared into the record, Samuel closed the interface. Good, he said softly, because there's one more thing you need to understand. The lights dimmed, the exosuited soldier shifted, and the chamber braced. The chamber lights dimmed until only the center dais and the red glow from the emergency panels remained. Every alien present felt the atmosphere tighten, like the quiet moment before a thunderstorm breaks open across the sky. The armored human soldier adjusted her stance, the faint hum of her exosuit filling the silence. Even without weapons drawn, she radiated the kind of power that made ancient empires reconsider their place in the universe. Samuel Drake stepped forward, hands loosely clasped behind him. Now that the accords are signed, he said in a low, steady voice, you deserve to know the final context. A shiver passed through the delegations. The reptilian commander swallowed audibly. Final context? Yes, Samuel replied. Something you all overlooked during this confrontation. The Scytherans flickered uneasily. We do not understand. Samuel nodded. You focused on the fleets, on the technology, on Horizon Array, on the soldier behind me. All reasonable concerns. He paused, long enough for the air to thicken again. But you failed to consider humanity itself. The council stared, confused. Samuel continued, tone sharpening slightly. You see, every species here assumed Earth's rise in capability was accidental, reactionary, or impulsive. You believed our preparations were driven solely by fear. He glanced at the armored soldier, who gave a faint nod. They weren't. A tremor ran through the hive-minded delegation. Then what drove them? Choice, Samuel said. Intention. Unity. He tapped a command on his wrist display. The projector dome above them activated again, but instead of fleet maps or danger signals, it displayed humanity itself. Billions of humans, across continents, across colonies, across outposts, across orbital cities, across lunar settlements, all united under a single council vote, displayed in shimmering numbers. The amphibian diplomat blinked rapidly. "You are showing us your population?" "Not the population," Samuel corrected. "The vote." The display zoomed in, an overwhelming majority. A single decision: humanity will not be bullied. Gasps scattered through the chamber. The Cytherans whispered, "You mobilized your entire species?" "Not for war," Samuel said. "For agreement, for intention, for direction." He paced slowly, letting his words sink deep. "Humans do not unify easily. We argue. We challenge each other. We disagree, for sport sometimes. Yet for the first time in generations, we were unanimous." He gestured upward toward the glowing vote. "We chose peace as long as peace was respected, and we chose survival if threatened." The reptilian strategist clutched his chest. "You are telling us your species voted to stand behind all these measures?" "Yes," Samuel answered. "Every protocol, every defense structure, every contingency. You thought I came here representing Earth." He turned, facing them fully. "I came here representing 8 billion signatures." A wave of dread washed through the chamber. The hive minds fell silent, truly silent, for the first time since the meeting began. Their psychic threads flickered and dimmed. "You must understand," Samuel said softly, almost kindly, "humans do not like being forced. It activates something old in us, something persistent, something resilient." The armored soldier stepped forward now, speaking for the first time since entering. "Ambassador," she said, "the outer systems confirm stabilization. External threats neutralized. Reinforcements await your final directive." Samuel nodded once. "Excellent. Inform them the crisis is contained." She tapped her gauntlet and stepped back. The chamber fell into a silence so complete it felt tangible. Samuel returned to the dais, standing where Zareth had challenged him not long ago. "Let me offer clarity," he said. "Earth does not seek dominion. But Earth will not bend. We do not want your worlds, your thrones, or your territories." He leaned slightly closer, voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire room. "We only want to exist without being hunted." A soft ripple of shame moved through several delegations. Samuel straightened. "With these accords, the galaxy enters a new era. One built not on fear, but on respect, earned, not demanded. You now understand humanity's position." He gestured subtly toward the armored soldier. "And our capacity." The Cytherans bowed their glowing heads. "We acknowledge Earth as a stabilizing force," they whispered. "And we pledge peace." One by one, every delegation followed, kneeling, bowing, lowering themselves in gestures of submission or respect appropriate to their species. Samuel didn't smile. He simply breathed out, a slow, weary exhale of a man who had carried too many burdens, too many warnings, for far too long. "Good," he said softly. The lights gradually shifted from blood red back to calm white. The soldier turned toward him. "Ambassador, council secured. What are your orders?" Samuel Drake looked over the humbled chamber, the new accords shimmering like the dawn of a different future. "Orders?" he repeated. He allowed himself the faintest, gentlest smile. "Take us home." And for the first time since the war was demanded, the galaxy exhaled.